Being in the ecom space for nearly 5 years now with Google Ads, we come across a ton of different stores and a lot of different categories of stores. And one of the categories that we just see absolutely rip when it comes to a really good store with great products, enough SKUs, and a good strategy behind it is going to be in the art category. That's going to be stores primarily with mid to higher ticket levels and cost of art. And that could be anywhere from art selling for $1,000 up to $10,000. Usually AOV for these types of stores is going to be mid 5 figures, maybe 4 to 5K AOV. But it's really the stores that are a little bit more high ticket. We do work with other stores that are lower ticket that sell smaller types of art or kits, things of that nature. But this video and the strategies I'm going to go over are going to be exactly how we scale these higher ticket stores up to the point of doing mid 6 figures per month just on Google Ads, which helps their store reach the point of doing 7 figures per month. These are generally also stores that have high SKUs. You could have anywhere from a couple hundred products to into the 10,000s of products, usually a lot of variation. And these strategies work really well for that because it gives the algorithm a little bit more control to decide what to show based off the traffic type. And we found that that allows these stores to scale significantly farther instead of trying to take more control on the ad side, which we do in a lot of other types of categories. Now, this is an example of one of the stores that we have last 60 days. You can see they did about close to 100K in spend and then about 4x ROI. So closer to the $300,000 to $400,000 in return level. I want to talk about the overall strategy, the important details of each area's strategy. That's going to be going over the pmax strategy, search targeting, what to focus on, shopping, and so on. And these are going to be very, very specific. Once again, how to get a store like this to a heavier level of scale. And we see it over and over again in the mid to high AOV ticket stores. So let's talk about pmax first, which is going to be a very large level of the scale when it comes to these stores. Now, with pmax, the biggest thing you can do is structure it properly. And the structure is going to depend heavily on the type of store you're running. With this type of store, it's really unique because we run it in a way that we don't normally conventionally like to run pmax, but we've seen over time with the amount of tests we've done that this actually just works the best. Sometimes things work better than other things just based off of how the platform carries them, depending on the types of products as well. So through everything that we've tested and all the different structures that we like running, this one has just carried the numbers the farthest. So that's going to be having a catch-all pmax. Now, catch-all is really running all of the products in one pmax instead of having it chopped up or having like category-based pmax, some of the other types that we talk about across videos. With the catch-all, normally what we do is have asset groups that are relative to the categories in the store. In this case, once again, very unique, and this is something that works across the stores that we do in the same industry. We actually have a catch-all asset group as well. This is going to be an asset group that has creatives relative to the overall theme of the store. It's going to have pretty much images based off the best products, some of the best products and pictures from the store. And then also language and maxing out, once again, very important in this case, you have to max out the different assets, making sure you use the amount of photos, videos, text descriptions that you can use. But they're not going to be specific to types of products when it comes to the text or the actual categories. It's going to be more blanketed to the overall theme of the store. And when you do that, it gives the algorithm a little bit more control instead of telling the algorithm what specifically needs to be shown for specific categories of product. And then you get to the actual signals, audience signals, which is very important as well. And with the audience signals, there's going to be a lot of different areas that you can include signals for. One of the most important is going to be the actual data of people purchasing on your store. Now, the ones that we use, there's a lot of different ways of going about this. One very important one is going to be an offline Zap that's going to continuously update the audience signal based off of people who are purchasing last 30 days. It's basically going to give the audience signal the most up-to-date signals of people who are purchasing, because buying data will always change over time, right? So you don't want to give signals based off of buyers that came in 2 years ago or so, but that's going to be a very important one. And there's going to be different ways of setting that up. If you want help on that, you can always reach out to us. But next is going to be email data. So if you can upload actually relevant people who are subscribed to your email list, mainly that's going to be people who purchase. But if you don't have enough data to do just purchasers, you can also just do all subscribers. Usually the core of this is really just giving Google the best possible data to tell it signal-wise. But if you don't have enough data, you can always go a little bit broader. So if you have enough purchasers, definitely make sure to upload the people who have subscribed that have also purchased. If you don't, you can go a little bit broader to maybe add to carts, things of that nature. Next is going to be the top 30% of spenders. And what this does is it feeds data based off of people who spend the most on the store. This is really important because this is pretty much the cream of crop data. This is telling Google specifically, out of everyone you want to target, who is the best possible person to bring to your store. So this is something that you can do actively. You can update it every few months. Generally, depending on the volume of purchases of your store, especially if you're higher ticket, you might not have a huge number of these people to constantly feed in. But what I would do is update it every few months, and it'll give Google, once again, most up-to-date data to base things off of. Now, next is gonna be non-warm targeting, right? It's gonna be cold targeting. This is where you can do in-market targeting. This is gonna be in-market audiences that are relative to people you're trying to target. This is a no-brainer. Just really make sure to stay contextually to the type of person who's going to buy from your store. And then last is going to be keyword-based targeting. What you're going to do here is putting keywords based off of what should convert. Now, ideally, you have keyword data based on what does convert if you're running Google Ads, and you're going to want to use that as the audience source. But if you don't, once again, you can deduct. If you're using, abstract art or art that's very specific to a type of design, then you can always use keywords around that are higher intent and try to give Google, once again, the best possible signal. After you have that catch-all asset group and then you have the right signals in there, then it's going to come down to what bidding style are you going to use to actually scale a campaign. With this type of campaign, once again, we want it to be a little bit more algorithm-based. So instead of using something very specific like target ROAS or trying to get Google to really fixate on specific traffic, we're simply going to use maximize conversion value. This, once again, testing between the two, we've seen the campaign actually scale farther. So this is, once again, one of the areas you're just going to let the algorithm kind of take the wheel and see how it does for the store. Like I said, this is based off of data that we've collected through the months and years of running these types of stores, but sometime your store could be a little unique. Just because I'm saying this is exactly what we do doesn't mean it's gonna 100% always work for you. Make sure to base things off your own data and always what works in your actual own ad account. But little disclaimer there, this should do, in theory, based off of our data, the best for this type of store. Next is gonna be the shopping strategy. Now, shopping's unique as to, we talk a lot about now you can run shopping next to PMax, and we see a lot of scale doing the two combined as opposed to just focusing on one or the other. So I'd highly encourage, if you're just running shopping, you're just running PMax, make sure to take this seriously because you will see a very large increase of scale by combining the two. And when it comes to shopping strategies, they're also going to be very unique to the type of store. We're going to talk about what we do for these types of stores, but it's not a one size fits all. It's really through all the different testing and categories and structures, there really are unique ones that will end up working really well compared to others. And it seems like almost, I wouldn't say necessarily luck, because you do a lot of work and a lot of testing to figure out what works the best. But point is, you have to do that to figure out what works the best. It's kind of impossible to guess. So we did that work for you. We're gonna go over exactly what we do on the shopping side for these types of stores. The first is gonna be campaigns that are segmented by the success of the categories of products. Now, right down here, this is gonna be number one. And this is really gonna focus on the top products within each category of store. So we'll put in top products and then by categories. And really what you're doing here is when you build out the shopping campaign, what you're gonna do inside is gonna have ad groups that contain only categories of products based off of top winners within each of the actual categories. So if you have 10 categories of products of art in your store, each category is likely gonna have best sellers. Maybe you'll have 100 products in each category. What you're gonna do is just include those top 10, and then you're gonna have those restricted to that specific ad group. And then same thing for those other categories, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then what you're gonna have is really based off of the shopping campaign, each category will have its top 10 products. And then you can see based off of those ad groups, what's gonna scale the most, and you can dictate what's gonna stay, what's gonna leave based off of what works in the actual campaign. And we will see certain categories obviously take off, even though they're technically top products per category, there's also gonna be categories that do better than others, and you wanna make sure those get the budget. So that's gonna be the first campaign type. The other one's gonna be a similar concept, but a different build. That's gonna be number 2, which is gonna be not by category, but exclusively based off of the success of the amount of products in each sequence. So what I mean by that is you're gonna have, for example, one ad group that's gonna have the top 1 to 10 product bestsellers. From there, you're gonna have the top 10 to 50. From there, you're gonna have the top 50 to 100. And then after that, you're gonna have the top 100 to 200. Now, this can depend a lot on your SKUs. Maybe you have a store where most of the revenue is being pulled in by a lot less of products. So maybe in this case, instead of doing these larger increments, you could do 1 to 10, 10 to 25, 25 to 50, and things of that nature. Or you have just a spread of revenue across products and you can do bigger categories. But point is, this is really just taking the top 100 to 200 products and having a segmented campaign for those, especially if you are at the point of having SKUs into the thousands, possibly 10,000. You want to make sure that Google's platform doesn't necessarily get overwhelmed, because when you have that amount of products, it wants to test a lot of them. And if you know they're not going to sell well anyways, just because they don't do well across other platforms, you want to make sure you don't overwhelm Google and you give Google the best possible products to show first, which is what you're doing in this scenario. And these can actually run next to each other, even though they technically will have some level of overlap of products. They will scale next to each other, and the back end will really dictate what's going to get what placements. But we do see when you combine these two, they're going to get a level of scale as a whole that's much farther than just trying to have the two combined. There's going to be one honorable mention as well here, and that's going to be just a number 3 campaign, which is the catch-all shopping. And what that is, as simple as it sounds, is just having a shopping campaign that has all products in it. This is usually going to be a little bit lower budget compared to the other two. Once again, always base your decisions based off of the actual data in your account. One of these might work out better for you than the other, and that's where you're going to scale out. So make sure to always feed what's working the best in your actual account. When it comes to these campaigns, the pattern of them scaling is a little funky. You're going to get a lot of slowness in the front end because these campaigns are a little different. They're not as reliant on account data as they used to be in the past. You used to have a manual bidding model to collect data and then switch it to smart bidding. That's gotten a lot better, but it's not as advanced as, let's say, PMax, which will just pick up from the get-go. So you're going to usually use a bidding model like target ROAS. Usually we're going to have the target ROAS anywhere between 200 to 300%. Depends on your break even. In this case, probably about 250%. But what's going to happen is it needs data still, even though you have that smart bidding. So you're going to have it run for a week or two and have a little bit slow of a ramp up. But then once it hooks, because it has enough data to go after, it's going to have a lot of ramp up on the back end. So don't discount it just because it takes a couple of weeks to learn. Once it starts learning, it's going to have a lot of scalability on the back end of the campaign. And then once it does scale up and you have that level of scalability, when it comes to the holiday seasons and sales, you're going to have a lot of scalability too. So make sure to get this work out of the way before those holiday seasons come, because you don't want to go through that slow period when you want them to scale up really high. So that leads to the last part of the strategy, which is going to be search. Search almost always contains 2 areas. There's going to be, of course, warm traffic, which is debatable per industry. I'm going to talk about why it's really important for this industry. And then there's going to be cold. The reason why warm is so important for the art industry to protect as far as your actual own traffic is generally conversions will mean a lot of revenue, and warm traffic buys very quickly. So if someone's coming from, let's say, Facebook, and they go to Google and they see competitors' ads and they have similar paintings, they might have lower costs, whatever they are, they can poach a very valuable type of traffic that's going to convert very easily. Whereas if you just spent a couple of dollars getting that person back to your website, you then save that sale. And the problem is, a lot of the times art stores will have very common names within their name. So it could have art in the name, whatever it is. And people will target those keywords not knowing that they're your brand just because it has art in the name of your store or something like painting, whatever it is. People will target those based off of other terms, and then they'll still show for people searching your brand, and they'll show up there. And if you're not there to protect, then they might actually poach that traffic and steal it and then get the sale. So it will cost money to protect your traffic, but with a higher ticket store like this, 1 extra painting saved per year is going to make that back for you, right? So almost always worth it. When it comes to warm targeting, generally what you're going to do is try to maximize the amount of impressions you can get, because you want all possible traffic that is ready to convert. So you can use a bidding model like target impression share, or really trying to maximize the amount of people within people searching, and not use a smart bidding model that's really just going to focus on people who are likely to convert, because you know that they are high intent based off the fact that they're coming back from another platform to Google to search your type of product or brand name, and then they're ready to convert. So once again, I'd recommend protecting the traffic. We've done it across the stores that we work with. We've also tested not doing it, and we do see store revenue decline. So just a tip. Next is going to be cold. Cold is a little bit different of a game in this type of store as well. There are a lot of different strategies to target cold search traffic. A lot of the times we're going to focus on phrase match because we want to reduce the level of bad traffic you go after. Once again, very unique for this type of store. we actually have seen that the broader intent type traffic and also broader way of running the campaign actually scales the best. So instead of focusing on like really high intent, longer tail type keywords, you're actually going to focus on the broader type keywords. And once again, let the algorithm take the wheel a bit. So broader intent, but also using broad match, which is going to allow Google to do the work on the back end to decide who's actually going to convert based off of the broad level of traffic you're targeting. And the keywords you're targeting, once again, you're going to have categories we'll talk about in a second, but the keywords that you're going to be targeting, when I say broad, it could be something simple like, paintings with birds. Maybe not that exact keyword, but you get the idea. It's really just focusing on broad-based terms within a greater term that's going to yield a lot of different searches relative to the type of product that you're trying to sell. On top of that, like I said, you're not going to use phrase match targeting here. You're going to use broad match targeting, and then you're going to use target ROAS, which is the most important part of this strategy. If you use something like maximize conversion value, that's what's going to yield a lot of really trash traffic that's not going to convert. You're going to burn a bunch of money. But when you use something like target ROAS, you're telling Google specifically, out of all of this broad traffic that I want to target in this campaign, I need to go after people who are going to yield me some kind of ROI. That way I can continue spending money. If you don't do that, Google's just going to go wild and start spending your money. If you do that, it's going to focus of all of that broad traffic, who's the best to bring to the store, it's going to yield a conversion. So make sure if you do ever use broad type targeting or broad type intent, as far as the keywords you're targeting, you have to have a little bit stricter of a bidding style, because it's going to tell Google, even though you're targeting broad people, you still need to get people into the funnel that are likely to convert. The last thing is just going to be making sure to have the keywords you're targeting still in categories. Generally, the categories and the ad groups that the categories are going to be in are going to be the categories on the store that you have. So if you have, once again, 10 different categories in the store, you're probably going to have 10 different ad groups. In each ad group, there's going to be terms relative to that respective category. You can try testing and shopping them out with independent budgets. We've once again seen in this instance that having them in the same campaign and giving a blanket budget to that campaign, allowing the algorithm to decide between those ad groups, just works the best. In some cases, it's the opposite with other types of stores, but with mid to higher ticket figure art, we have seen that letting the algorithm, in this case as well, will yield the most results and the most scale. Now that we've talked about the exact type of campaigns that we're using on repeat for these types of clients, I want to talk a little bit about attribution and then scaling, which is a little bit more of the fun part. But when it comes to these stores, especially higher ticket, you have to treat the data and the sales and the time window a little bit different than you would with a lower ticket store. So for example, lower ticket, if somebody's going to buy a $40 painting, it's probably not much of a thought. They're going to see the ad, they're going to see the store. It's a little bit more of an impulse buy. But if it's a $3,000 painting, it's something they might think about for a little bit. So a lot of the times we see with these stores that the attribution window is much larger than a couple of days. It could be up to 2 weeks. And if that's the case, and you know that attribution window, key decisions have to be made after that attribution window. So there are decisions you can make within just based off of the front end data. But if you're making big decisions, I really, really recommend to make sure you always have a timeline after that window. So let's say you want to look at, this month, we'll say it's the end of the month. What you'd be looking at is actually the first 2 weeks of the month when it comes to decision making, because the last 2 weeks don't have enough time for that attribution window to close out, which means you're not having all of the data and all the people that purchase to make decisions on. And if you don't have all that data, you might shut off something or tweak something that actually is very profitable that would have looked great if you just waited a little bit longer. So there's a bit of an art to it. Like I said, most major decisions will be made after the attribution window of the time frame closes out. But don't burn money, don't waste money. If something's going horribly wrong or store sales decline and your spend's going up, you still want to make those decisions and tweak budget. This is really just for decisions when you're in the average level of running the account or scaling. So basically, if there's not something bizarre going on. The next part of that topic is going to be cross-channel attribution. With these stores, especially with higher ticket stores, larger attribution windows, you're going to have a lot of cross-channel purchases. People are going to come a lot from Facebook, see ads on Google. People are going to go from Google, see ads on Facebook. A lot of the times, people will, because they're using multiple channels actively, people probably use Facebook, Instagram every single day, Google maybe a couple times a day, and they're taking a certain amount of time to make those purchases. What's going to happen is they're going to have experience seeing your ads on each platform. And if that's the case, each platform is likely going to try to pull the conversion value into their tracking and think that they're the ones who caused it. So highly recommend, if you're a store like this and you're actually scaling out, you're doing, let's say 100, 200K worth of revenue per month and you're trying to scale to 1 million per month or 7 figures per month, you need to have a software that'll be able to deduct based off of where the traffic's coming from as a whole from all channels, what should actually yield the results. And that's going to be something like Wicked Reports, it could be Triple Whale, there's a bunch of different softwares that do it. But at the point of doing 6 figures per month, you need that level of clarity because you don't want to dictate a lot of budget to a platform when really it's coming from the other platform. We've seen it happen before and it could waste a lot of money. So highly recommend spend the money on those platforms because it will allow you to scale farther and dictate where spend should actually go platform wise. Now let's talk about scale and increasing budget. There's going to be really 2 different ways to scale these accounts. One's going to be during the normal season, you can call it off season, and the other is going to be during holidays and especially Q4. When it comes to these stores during off season, we haven't seen necessarily like an incredible way to just shoot them to the moon. They're going to be steady increase type stores because they're such high ticket purchases, unless there's some kind of exterior variable, which is causing heightened sales. A lot of the times you're going to be really looking for that steady increase of sales over time, but there's going to be the holidays that come in between, right? We'll talk about that in a second. Long story short, really what you're trying to do in the off season is mitigate risk of really highs, ups and downs. And what can cause that is going to be could be any type of variable. It could be shopping patterns. It could be certain things that happen that make people want to spend money less, like bad things in the economy, the president's going crazy, whatever it is. We see all the time events like that cause buying patterns to shift. And it might look like something bad is happening in the campaigns, but in reality, it might just be a 3 or 4 day window where people are scared and they just don't want to spend a ton of money. And there's going to be a difference there because when those windows happen, you don't want to fear react and pull budget down a ton, because if you do that, you're going to have to build back up with that budget. So generally what's going to happen is if you see steady decline, that's where you're going to start pulling down budget. But if you see erratic movements, that's where you usually want to kind of stay strong and make sure, just get those diamond hands ready and make sure to stay and don't decrease rapidly, because when you do that, it's going to cause the campaigns to go a little bit haywire. So anytime in the off season you have campaigns that are consistently successful but really random ups and downs, you just kind of want to tolerate them unless there's something really bizarre happening. Then of course don't burn money. But if you make too rapid of changes, it's going to cause the campaigns to kind of go out of whack, and it'll actually do more damage on the back end than saving a couple bucks during that day just because there's a random down day and spike of sales. So really when it comes to the rate of when you want to make decisions on the normal seasons, it's usually going to be 3 to 6 days. In most stores, especially lower ticket, that might be every 72 hours is usually the 72 hour with paid advertising. But with these higher ticket stores, not only do you have the data delay on the Google side, you also have the attribution window delay on the purchasing side. So you want to have a little bit more tolerance time-wise. Now, the caveat to that is going to be store data. If you see very clearly when you make an increase that sales increase in the store side, then you can go back to the Google platform and make an increase quicker than 6 days, maybe it's 3 days. But if you don't see a clear increase or correlation on the store side, that's where you want to wait a few more days and just see on the campaign side, is there an actual increase of ROI based off that spend? The last thing is going to be holiday sales. Now, when it comes to holidays, this is crucial. You're not going to really be basing things off of the actual Google Ads data, especially because holidays, it could be 3 to 7 days, depending on the holiday. Obviously in Q4, there's going to be a lot more spread out of the holidays, get more data. But because once again, the data is not going to flow quick enough into the platform side, you can't base increases by just the platform data, or else you're going to be way behind. So the best thing you can do is really base things off of past trends. Like if you've been running the store and the store revenue increases by a certain amount, you can usually use that for some predictability. But when it comes to these stores, we'll usually see the height of scale go anywhere from 2 to 5x what the spend and ROI is on the actual off season. So this is a little bit more of an art, because what you're doing is really making heavy increases on the front end, expecting for sales to heighten because of past data, or because people are likely to buy during the great sale that you're going to run. So what I recommend is don't wait for store data. Make heavy increases. When I say heavy increases, if you're spending, let's say $500 a day on a campaign, it's going to be your breadwinning campaign, or $1,000 per day. You might increase immediately to $1,500 or $2,000. And what that's going to do is it's going to give the campaign immediate room to scale based off the heightened buying. And when Google has immediate signals coming back into the campaign, you're going to see that budget eat up really quickly, but you're also going to see on the store side a lot of purchases coming through. So the key here is predictive increases. base next increases off of the store data. If you see that you spent 2K halfway through the day and the store data shows that purchases correlated with that, boom, bump it up to 3K, bump it up to 4K, whatever it is, how much room you have to risk. You want to make sure to maximize the amount of scale as quick as possible, because all the other stores during those holidays are gonna be trying to do the same thing, and you need to eat that market share before they do, or you're gonna miss out on a lot of sales. So there's gonna be some point where it plateaus. A lot of times you'll see those signals next to the other platforms. Like if you see Facebook, for example, slowing down, it's gonna be a good signal that Google also is probably nearing the level of spend you want to hit during that sale. But the easiest way to do this is really just basing it off of the past trends. If you don't have those past trends, it's gonna be a little bit more risky, but it's gonna get you the trends to use on the next time. So it's a little bit more of a necessary risk. Once again, I would just always recommend make the increases that you're confident about making on the front end. Don't wait for the data to tell you that, because these timelines are so concise. I hope this video helped you. We went over a lot of very specific information for these types of stores. If there's a store that you have that you'd like me to make a video specifically about, feel free to drop it in the comments. I'd love to talk on the strategies that we use actively, especially if we've worked in that industry. We've worked in most of them. If you have any questions about what I talked about in this video, you can also drop them in the comments. Happy to go over it specifically myself. That being said, thanks for watching. If you like this video, like and subscribe. We always appreciate it, and looking forward to seeing you in the next one.